Hey everybody. Today I want to talk about hole in the head disease. I have a German blue ram in my tank upstairs that has a few little spots on its forehead that for all the world look like they're going to develop into the nasty little pits that we know as hole in the head disease. It's also referred to as head and lateral line erosion disease, and that is usually because the pitting or the erosion, the holes that develop, whatever they are, the lesions if you will, usually develop around the eyes, on the forehead, and then down along the lateral line of the fish. And I've seen some really nasty cases of it. I've been doing a little bit of reading, and according to what the Googles say, not very often fatal, but if left unchecked and the conditions that cause it aren't addressed, it can get really nasty. And like I say, I've seen some really gruesome cases of it at the fish store that people have brought in for rescue fish and stuff like that. It can really Swiss cheese up a fish. It puts holes all through them. It's really unpleasant to see if you've ever seen a fish with an advanced case of hole in the head disease. So what causes it is a bit of a mystery. 10 years ago when I got into the hobby, I started using the activated carbon in my aquariums because I wanted that crystal clear water, and I soon found out that that was controversial because the carbon is sometimes associated with hole in the head disease, and that was 10 or 12 years ago that I read about that. And the understanding at the time was the carbon strips so much stuff out of the water, and it purifies and cleans the water so much that it's actually stripping some of the necessary nutrients or something out of the water. I don't buy that. I didn't then. I don't now. I also don't buy that the carbon would strip any of the mineralization out of the water, because carbon doesn't take the mineralization out of the water. If you've got hard water and you're running carbon, it's not going to pull that calcium out of the water, but it will pull other dissolved solids out of your water if you've got tannins or if you've got chemicals in the water or something like that. And then of course any physical detritus or whatever will get pulled out by that, but it's not going to affect your water hardness. It's not going to affect your mineralization or anything like that. So I've never really thought that the carbon would be an issue, but I learned about hole in the head disease way back then, and I've always been afraid of using the carbon or having really pure water because of that ever since then. Now, I say that because my water is pretty pure. It runs through a water softening system. It comes out of the ground without very much in it to begin with. It comes out soft and acidic, but I add a little bit of calcium and magnesium just to bring the pH up, but then I remove the calcium and magnesium again, which leaves the pH where it is. It leaves a little bit of the carbonates in the water, but I remove the calcium and the magnesium from the water, and I replace that with some sodium ions. So my water is not pure, but it doesn't have a lot in it. It's got a little bit of carbonate in it, and it's got a little bit of sodium ions in it, and that's about it. So the purity aspect could play into why I've had this issue one other time. I did have a T-bar cichlid that I'd forgotten about until one of my viewers reminded me, and that used to also get little sort of pits and holes on the side of its head. But if I do a water change or a series of water changes, they would clear up over a few days, and then they wouldn't come back until I kind of started neglecting the tank a little bit. And then as soon as I started doing some water changes, they would clear up and go away. So I'm attempting to do the same thing with my cichlid upstairs, my German blue ram, and I'm going to see if the same thing doesn't happen, that these little marks don't start clearing up. Now keep in mind, I'm not even sure if these are actually hole in the head disease. It's just a couple little marks on its forehead, but it looks like that's what they're going to develop into at this point. So the water purity, the carbon, that's all sort of, you know, speculative, and all of it is kind of speculative. The most common thing you're going to see when it comes to causes of it would also be a parasite called hexamatiasis, something like that. If you look up hole in the head disease, you'll see the parasite that I'm talking about almost immediately. It's the first thing that comes up. But this is not always identified when a fish has hole in the head disease, and this is a known parasite. You can test either it's there or it's not. And so if fish have hole in the head disease and this parasite's not present, then that would seem that there's at least other causes. This parasite may be a cause of it, but there's obviously at least other causes of it. So the parasite thing is hit or miss. The water purity is speculative. Food quality and dietary needs is another one that's sort of speculative. If you're not given certain cichlids, certain types of nutrients, or a good, well-balanced diet, this may be a condition that develops. Now, I typically feed mine mostly just prepared food, which I guess you could say is probably like the equivalent of fast food for fish for their whole life. But my fish also eats the fry that get born into that tank. I've got live bears in that tank and I've witnessed it. So it gets live food, and I'm pretty sure it eats algae and little bits of leaves and stuff, because I see it nibbling on the plants and stuff. So there's plenty of stuff within the tank for it to feed and forage naturally. Plus I do give it, even though it's prepared food, I do give it a wide variety of prepared food, everything from shrimp pellets to cichlid pellets to algae wafers to flake food. So the idea that it's not having its dietary needs met is, I'm a little dubious about that as well. And then water quality on the other end of the spectrum, water that's too nitrate rich and too organics rich could be a contributing factor. And again, all this is speculation. You know, it's either the water's too pure or the water's not pure enough. You know, how can both things be the same cause? So I don't know, but my water is fairly pure in one sense, but it also has fairly high organics and nitrate in another sense, at least by some people's standards, maybe 60, 70 parts per million, getting up there. So I don't know. I really don't know whether this is something to be overly concerned about, but we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on it, and we're definitely going to be salting the tank, just putting a little bit of not marine salts, but just a little bit of aquarium salt in the tank, just to ease the stress on the fish. And I'm going to stay on top of doing water changes. We're going to try to bring the nitrate down and keep it consistently down, along with all the other nutrients and stuff that build up in the tanks. We'll try to keep that under control a little bit. And other than that, maybe I can improve its diet, maybe put some fresh vegetables or something in there, and that's about it. The last thing I will say is that sometimes stray electrical currents is attributed, but stray electrical currents is one of those, it gets attributed to everything that ever happens in a tank, and it's usually not something that's really an issue. If you've got anything in your tank at all that runs on electricity, especially with a magnet in it, like an impeller or a motor or something like that, you're going to have electricity in your tank. You're going to have a little bit of electromagnetic bleed off in your tank. This is not going to bother your fish. It's not going to really affect your fish. Think about the same as like an airplane getting hit by lightning. The airplane's in the sky, the lightning just goes around it. It's not, the airplane's not grounded to anything. The lightning's not really affecting it. And the fish are the same way. If there's a tiny little bit of electrical current in the tank, the fish aren't really being exposed to that. If I stick my hand in it when I'm grounded to the floor and I create a path to ground, then I might feel a little tingling, or if it's a bad leak, I might actually electrocute myself. But as long as there's no path to ground through the fish, you know, as long as the fish aren't holding on to something metal in the tank, then the fish aren't really going to be affected, especially by the weak stray currents or whatever. So I don't put a lot of weight into these stray electrical currents as being a cause for hole in the head disease either. So that's about all that you're going to find if you look it up, if you look into it. It's all a bunch of speculation. It's all these sort of, maybe it's one of these or a combination of some of these causes or whatever. So try doing some of these things and see if it doesn't clear it up. There's no real medicine that I know of except for treating for that one particular parasite. I don't think I have a parasite in my tank. I haven't done anything to that tank. I haven't introduced anything to that tank. Parasites don't just pop up in your tank out of nowhere. They have to come from somewhere, and nothing's been introduced into that tank. So I'm not going the medication, parasite, all that kind of route just yet. We will go the let's do some water changes, let's wait and watch, and let's see what happens route. And again, if it's just a couple little spots that just stay there for the fish's whole life, that's fine. I just don't want it to progress and get worse and become this sort of wasting, erosive sort of disease. Again, if you've ever seen a fish with an advanced case of this, it's really gruesome. It's not something that you want to see. So leave me your thoughts down below if you've had any experience with this, or if you've got any opinion about what you think causes it, or whatever I just said is right, wrong, or whatever. Let me know down below. I'd be interested to hear your opinion or your thoughts on that. So make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget I do memberships now. Don't forget to check out my other channel, Dan's Outdoors and More, and I do a live stream every Friday and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hope to see you you there. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.